Want to catch your breath for a sec?
Yeah, I'm good.
Are you good?
Get it, yeah.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. All right. I forgot I had printed out everything and left it at home.
An agenda?
So first thing is the approved minutes. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes of August 18th?
We did, yeah.
Any changes, corrections, anything like that?
No.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, we're down here at public comments. We don't have anybody here in person, and anybody on the video?
No, there is no one on video.
Okay. All right. So the next agenda item is the elections for chair and vice chair or co-chair. I know that in my original email, we were going to use ballots, but Kalina, I guess I don't know if you contacted the city clerk or the city clerk contacted you, but they didn't like the idea of doing ballots. They thought that there might have been a lack of transparency within a public meeting setting. So I think we're going to go back to the old way, which isn't that old because we've only done it once before.
Right.
So I think the idea was that we can nominate anybody here, or we can self-nominate. And I think that you had added that you were hoping that during the nomination process, whoever makes the nomination would kind of say a sentence or two of why they were nominating that particular person. So, any nominations?
I would, I'll say it.
Are you nominating for chair first and then co-chair?
Yeah, we'll start off with chair,
Okay.
and then go to co-chair, okay? Any nominations for chair?
I would nominate you, Commissioner Cool. I think you've been very transparent. I like the way you've handled things here. And I think you've been doing a great job
Oh,
for chair.
okay.
I'd like to second that nomination. I feel things on the board have run smoothly and transparently and well balanced, and I think that's very, very important for this board. And I think that sort of continuity is important as we go forward.
Oh. All right.
Also,
Yeah.
point of order.
Yeah, please.
Not important, but my name is misspelled. I have two T's.
Thanks. Correct.
Thank you. Sounds good. All right. Any other nominations? Anybody else want to do the gig? They want to self-nominate?
Call the question.
Call the question.
Okay, I have no life. All right. So,
You want a motion for that?
yeah, anybody want to move to?
Well, I thought we had a nomination. Sure,
Okay,
but
so
I
we got-
would move re-elect Commissioner Coe to serve another term as chair of the commission.
Got to second that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Aye. All right.
Congratulations.
Sir.
Yeah? Okay, well, at least this time I know what I'm doing. Last time I had no idea what was going to happen, so it's not nearly a mystery. Okay, so let's go through the same process for co-chair. Any nominations for co-chair? Anybody want to be co-chair?
Forgive my confusion, but I'm not quite sure who was co-chair.
Oh, Renato was co-chair last time.
Okay.
But I think it's more or less in your absence, right? As far
Yeah.
as,
Yeah, that's more or less in my absence.
yeah. Who's more likely to be here most of the time? Yeah.
Good consideration.
I'd actually like to nominate Kevin. because he's here all the time.
Yeah.
And also, he has this, a lot of interest in this. He's got, I think, a palpable passion for this and the community, and I think that he would make a great co-chair.
Yeah, I second that.
Thank you.
All right. So, we have, any other nominations for co-chair? All right, we have Kevin Elliott out there. All in favor?
Aye.
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 We accept?
I accept.
Very good. Okay.
Congrats.
And we have pictures now? All right. So we've got that done. Okay, what's next on the agenda? Documents. All right. So, okay, now, Ferris, you had sent out documents.
Yes.
You might want to talk a little bit about why you sent it out and,
Sure. Thanks. So, good evening. So just based on a few of the last meetings, there's been lots of different kinds of questions. So Kalina and I have been doing what we can to try to figure out how to synthesize a lot of this information that might be coming at you all, with all the different resolutions, policies, strategic plan, outcomes within the strategic plan, key performance indicators within the outcome section. So it's a lot. So how do we kind of take a lot of this complex information and kind of like narrow it down for us more easily digestible? Because of course, time is a scarce resource. People don't have all day to read lots and lots of documents and things of that nature. So what we tried to do was take some of the things in resolution that we believe was very germane to this advisory board and kind of make sure to set you all's fingertips, and then not only just provide you all with it and the link to it, but maybe like a quick brief description of it. So we just kind of titled it as an annotated bibliography. So embedded in this document that's labeled as annotated bibliography, we have a link to the strategic plan, the City of Lawrence's strategic plan, with brief descriptions in that. And the next category, we have the Voluntary Advisory Boards, Commission, and Task Force, ordinance number 9984, out of Chapter 1A, with a brief description of that. Next is the City of Lawrence Resolution number 7473. I believe I have the link to that as well. And majority of this information can also be found on the City of Lawrence Human Relations website, but just so it's easily accessible for you all. Adopting an ethics and professional conduct policy, and it's in the next category with a brief description of that. And some of these things have been updated. I think this one, for an example, that I know of, have been at least updated probably 3 times or so over the last few years. Then the next category, we have the City of Lawrence Resolution number 7472, which is establishing a standard policy governing the operation and conduct of advisory boards. A brief description of that. And then last but certainly not least, or that's not last actually, we have the Chapter 10, City of Lawrence Chapter 10, the Human Relations, which is the city code that kind of governs and establishes this board and kind of provides some directions, things of that nature. Again, another document, if you will, that has been updated a few times over the last few years to kind of strengthen it, to provide additional protections for some of our community members. And then last but not least, in the last box here, is the City of Lawrence, Kansas, Human Relations, the overview of the city, law and procedure. And this was based on a presentation that was given by Attorney Zach Verdell a couple months back, and he kind of helped just kind of provide a high-level overview of the city attorney's office does, the Human Relations Division, and providing some level of guidance for you all as the Human Relations Advisory Board. So we thought maybe this can be helpful, at least when you have questions, to kind of know where maybe to start, so you don't have to just kind of comb the website and get lost in all these different things. So that was one document that we wanted to provide to you all. And then I think, let me get back to the agenda here. Okay, here we go. And then I think another document that we put together and wanted to provide to you all was dealing with the history sort of the restructuring of the advisory board. Actually, let me look on here. This might be easier. And so again, this is about a year or so in the making as far as how all of the advisory boards across the city organization has been restructured. So we thought just the why to that and how it impact this advisory board specifically. This can help kind of provide some context and some clarity to that as far as why things have changed. As far as all the various advisory boards, how they're broken out under the various 5 outcomes within the city strategic plan. And for this advisory board, we can see has been placed under the safe and secure. And I'll just read that because it might be worthwhile. So under safe and secure, the description of that's part of the city strategic plan outcome area that the Human Relations Commission has been charged with helping the city commission to advance. Says Lawrence is a community where all people feel safe and secure and have access to trusted public and community-based safety resources. So that was kind of in alignment with the goals of the Human Relations Commission. So I figured just kind of want to put something together, talking about the dates, transitions, the why. Previously we had, 40, however many advisory boards there were. And if you think in terms of staff, having 1 to 2 staff liaisons, some meetings may be an hour, some may go 3 hours, sometimes there's special requests for other staff. So just from an efficiency standpoint, and then the cost that's also associated with that, in addition to just the time that community members are investing to volunteer on these various advisory boards. So instead of having one board that may have 13 members, one that has 5 members, how to restructure it in a way that it's consistent across the board, which helps to minimize having all these various bylaws for each different advisory board. So this was about. You're trying to be efficient with resources and people's time and contributions and things of that nature. So a lot of information in here as well to talk about sort of the history, the why, and the what, and how the restructuring has an impact directly on this advisory board. So there's some information there for you that hopefully can be helpful. And I recognize also from the last conversation that we had talking about the strategic plan and the outcome of safe and secure, that I know it was covered in the training as far as the city strategic plan, but as staff, we live in this world every day, but this information and language might be kind of new or need to be repeated a few times. So with that, I figured it might make sense to also provide the key performance indicators for that outcome area, so you can have a better sense of, okay, with the safe and secure, which kind of mostly is police and fire and dealing with issues of safety, but there's still at least 6 commitment areas, and you can see that sort of broken out, whether it's finance or equity inclusion or efficient effective processes. It's 6 different ones, community engagement, etc. What are the things that are being focused on in that area? So this advisory board can have a better sense of if this is an important key performance indicator under safe and secure, then maybe this is something that we can also figure out how we can help tackle this or help to advance this or provide some guidance or recommendations to the city commission or elected body about how we can move this forward and how that works in tandem with civil rights and the Human Relations Commission. So wanted to provide that to you all as well, just so hopefully a lot of these things can come together and start making more sense. You can start to see the connectivity between it all. So wanted to provide that information for you all, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yeah, just listening to your brief presentation. Thanks a lot, Ferris.
No problem.
The whole safe and secure thing seems nebulous to me. I mean, you're right. It's there's if I was to talk to a citizen out on the street and told him, so we're really into the whole issue of safety and security. What would that mean to you? And I think you're right. There, law enforcement, fire, things that are kind of a little bit more concrete than that. So for me, it's a little bit nebulous, the areas of safe and secure that we would be under our purview. I mean, sometimes I need examples of what that might look like.
Mm-hmm. So I think, thanks, great question. So I'll try to answer it a couple different ways, I guess. So
Okay.
First, largely, when we think in terms of safe and secure, I think that also can be interpreted as a place of welcoming, right? So what does it mean for all people to feel welcome in the city of Lawrence, right? In a safe way. So when you think in terms of public accommodation, the idea that people should be able to kind of go anywhere and not be discriminated against based on their characteristics or identity, that would help somebody feel safe and welcome and secure in our community. So that's one of the larger. With the city strategic plan and the safe and secure outcome, excuse the language, we do have, so for example, on the, what I provided you all, the key performance indicators for safe and secure, I'm not gonna count them all, but let's just say there's 20 key performance indicators. What the city has done over the last year or so is started to say, okay, we have key performance indicators, but how do we start to prioritize key performance indicators? Because we don't have the bandwidth to kind of make sure the needle is moving at the same time on all of them. So which ones are we prioritizing? Recently, safe and secure, at least from equity and inclusion, key performance indicator, recently shifted. We were focusing on the one that speaks about the variance and satisfaction based across race and gender, and I think education and class. Now it has shifted to a different key performance indicator where we're fleshing it out and developing strategies that looks at how cases essentially are being closed out. So when people think in terms of, I filed this kind of report, what's the status of that? We're looking to see from the city side of things how investigations are happening to make sure that people can feel welcome to this community, if you will. So it's a process, and there's some strategies embedded in that that I won't flush all the way out today, but the gist of it is when the police close their investigation, and depending on what it is, if they send it over to the prosecutor's office, that would be considered closing, one. But then two, part of the reason for this new focus on this new key performance indicator is to say, when you think in terms of, for an example, mental health, sometimes people may place a call. Police have this whole like log of call orders, right, from high priority of one that may be dealing with an element of a threat or violence or something of that nature to, let's say, vandalism or a civil disturbance of some sort between neighbors. Making sure that we're dispatching the right resources to a situation that makes the most sense so that maybe police arriving at a certain incident might escalate a situation. If it's dealing with something that's maybe dealing with mental health, the city has, I think, what is it called? I'm blanking on the language here. But essentially having mental health professionals ride along with officers to arrive at situations. So if we get the city receive a phone call about maybe an individual
Yeah, there's a
running in and out of traffic, for an example,
Yeah,
that's maybe,
crisis response unit.
yes, a crisis response unit, thanks. Dispatching several police officers to that situation might not be as effective as somebody more skilled in dealing with mental health issues and challenges in that regard. So that's what we're trying to focus on, to make sure that we're dispatching, addressing unique needs of our citizens in the most effective and efficient way. So with that being said, to help overall make the city be a safer place. So hopefully that made some sense. So it's still all kind of
It does.
complex and some jargon in there, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I'm still trying to figure out how we kind of interface with those. And in terms, when I think about key performance indicators, I'm looking at data and how do we meet those particular indicators, or how do we know how we're doing with those particular measures? Because I think maybe, I think more in terms of measures maybe than indicators, but, and maybe they're different.
I'm sorry, repeat that for me?
Well, and I was trying to figure out, how do we measure how well we're doing? First of all, the stuff that you just mentioned in terms of, mental health, which I'm really familiar with. I'm trying to figure out, how do we as a commission interface with things like that? Because I think you're right, it's really important. It's part of safe and secure. I think the thing about people needing to not feel as if they can go anywhere and not be discriminated against. I guess the only way that falls out is if there's a complaint, right? We wouldn't know whether this was, if we had no complaints, would it mean that the community was doing this perfectly. So I'm trying to figure out how do we measure how well we're doing in those areas.
Yeah, I think maybe this kind of ties into what Commissioner Elliott, or Vice Chair, Co-Chair now, maybe spoke about related to the aspiring to develop these
The homeless.
homeless Bill of Rights. So I think you all can look and say, okay, based on sort of what's happening throughout the community, the feedback that you all are receiving, you can develop your own metrics if that's what you're getting at. Because I think to what I'm hearing you say is a similar conversation that Kalina and I have in our office about sort of being internal facing, providing a lot of internal support for other departments. So even when we think in terms of our city strategic plan, we help to support moving things forward. So sometimes it's like we might be effective in helping, but it's not something tangible in some cases that says Department of Equity and Inclusion completed this right here. Because you're helping to kind of accomplish a larger goal. So sometimes it's who completed it or who was successful in moving the needle can kind of get blurry in some regards. So I think you all may be in that sort of similar space.
So the survey data that you provided, is this an annual survey? Does the city sort of create this data every year to sort of test how it's doing?
Can you tell me which one you're referring to?
it's
I'll pull
in
it
the
up.
packet, maybe like on page, like for example, on page 12,
Okay.
there's outcome safe and secure, and it has all these bar graphs about the variance and perceptions, for example, of safety based on race. Like, so it's clearly the city is collecting perception data in some sense. Is that an annual survey that's sent out? And
So that survey was done through the ETC survey data, and that was done like just over 2 years ago, and it was expected to do every 2 years.
oh, okay.
To collect that data. Some of the things in here is data that may be collected annually, and some is collected every other year, just sort of.
So for example, if this data collection is going to happen again soon, then maybe we can talk about, are there some questions that we could get in there to see how we're doing?
Yeah.
Like, to what's the percentage of the population that knows that City of Lawrence has an anti-discrimination ordinance and knows how to file a complaint if they need to, right? And that would give us some indication about how we're doing with respect to the thing that we're particularly interested in, the acts against, the ordinance against discrimination in employment and housing and public accommodation. There's really no data here to show that. And that might be one idea that we could, there's a metric that we can, and I'm sure there are other things like that. Like if we're gonna do some data collection soon, could we have some role in that to make sure we're collecting data, maybe a little bit of data to see how we're doing, and then things that we could do differently, different outreach, different education, etc.
So this-
It's interesting
this
because there
product
are-
is updated periodically. I'm sorry.
I was going to say there are KPIs that touch on what you're saying that are not under this.
That are not under this.
They're not under these, right? And so
Oh.
that it's interesting that you bring that up.
Okay.
Because we touch on some of those things that you say.
Maybe
in
they're
our-
somewhere, so they're somewhere else maybe in this.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's, because in my head I can think of like, strong welcoming neighborhoods is an outcome, but it's not the safe and secure outcome, right? But equity and inclusion touches on that.
Touches on that as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I did
that's-
want to provide, because it was sort of last minute after.
Oh, yeah, and this is not criticism.
No, you're good, you're good. I appreciate that.
Okay.
No, after I think Chairperson and I and Kalina had met to kind of talk about the agenda, I had like this eureka moment, like, oh, you know what, let me put this together, together. And another thing was going to be to provide you all with the link to there's a video on the city's website that kind of talks about the city strategic plan in like just under 3 minutes or 3 minutes and 1 second or something to that nature. So I'm going to pull that up, but I was like, I didn't want to take up too much of you all's time, because I'll see this as sort of you all's time. But yeah, there are some other areas that are touched on in different ways. So I think when this survey went out, for an example, it was a lot of conversation about how are citizens receiving information related to the city? Is it through social media? Is it through the city's website? Is it through the local newspaper? Where are people getting their information? So I think that might can discuss to what you're talking about, right? How familiar are people with the advisory board, and how can they become more familiar with the complaint process, et cetera? So I think that's a great point.
And forgive me if I'm restating the obvious, but I think perception of protections for race sexual orientation, gender identity are directly tied to safety.
Yes.
How often is this product updated? Is it like a working doc?
So yeah, if I'm going to turn this to a city strategic plan here.
No, please.
So big picture, to give more context. So the city strategic plan was rolled out just shy of 5 years ago. And so there's been this continuous way to figure out how do we continuously improve it to be as effective as possible, making sure that data is being not only collected, but measured, analyzed, et cetera, so we can see that we're moving the needle. In that process, the reason why I mentioned earlier about prioritizing some of the key performance indicators, because it was recognized that there's over like 100 key performance indicators. So the city don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to move all those things. But in those conversations, it was with some of the executive team members, we had some discussions surrounding data collection. So depending on the different departments, if it's economic development, for example, versus police, versus communication, some people use different tools and resources to collect their data. So if it's in-house, maybe you can do it annually. If we have to outsource it then maybe it's every 2 years. And maybe even if we collect it every 2 years, you have to have the staff capacity to analyze that data to make sense out of it. So we might not be able to report it till every 3 years. So long story short, it varies based on the key performance indicator and how we're going about collecting that data to make sense out of it.
Tracking, all right.
Yes. A great question.
So if you just look over here real quick, just there are a lot of you guys can take time to go through this if you want to, but also the site, like the whole site is getting revamped.
Oh, okay.
So it's like I want to send you there, but then there's gonna be some changes to it. But this kind of lays out just the framework in general, like the breakdown. So it starts with those outcomes, right? So then there's the 5 of those, well 6 technically, including citywide. And then it breaks it down even further into those commitments. And so those commitments fit into those outcomes. Now, can you do the description? Like, what do they say they are? It's like the
It's a
why
great
and
question.
how, or?
Yeah, I actually was just thinking when you were speaking about that. So maybe one more point that can help provide some clarity as well to this is the way the city strategic plan is sort of structured. It's to where each key performance indicator have dual ownership. So there's an outcome and there's a commitment. The outcome is sort of the how, whatever you're accomplishing. The commitment is how we go about doing the work, basically. So equity and inclusion is a commitment area. Sustainability is a commitment area. How are we going about accomplishing these goals with the equity lens, sustainability lens, fiscal lens? So with that being said, when we think in terms of safe and secure, at least for the equity and inclusion key performance indicators, when Kalina and I meet with, chief of police, chief of fire, we're having conversations about sort of what's happening. They might bring from their advisory boards, hey, this came up at our police advisory board meeting, and I could also share, hey, this came up at the Human Relations Commission meeting. We recognize there's gaps here. We might need to be doing these things and these things. So again, how the information sort of feeds to move in this, it might not be directly
It's not
apparent.
linear.
It might not be linear in that regard, but it's there and it's all sort of happening. I'm thinking about,
There are a lot of moving parts.
yeah.
Personally, I want to say this really is helpful to me to make sure what I bring to this board is consistent with the city's goals and ideas. So thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Nice.
Okay.
And maybe later, sometime maybe this week, Kalina or I will send out the link to the video I was just discussing.
Yeah, we'll do
that
that.
talks about a large overview of the city's strategic plan. It might be helpful to better understand and or provoke some questions or generate some questions that we can have further dialogue and help to figure out better strategies to move this work forward.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other discussion, questions, comments? No? Okay. Let's-
I do have one question.
Yeah,
Do you
please.
think there are a few indicators that we should keep an eye on? As far as, can we make a direct impact on one of those if it sways a certain way?
Most likely, I don't know what it is right now offhand because I deal with a lot of them. So just under, like she was saying, just under the outcome or commitment area, you scroll back up to equity and inclusion right there since like we just seen it. There's specific to safe and secure, but just under equity and inclusion, for an example, there's there was 22 key performance indicators that my office is sort of responsible for making sure progress is happening on. In addition to just serving on some of the other boards, so it's a lot that I have top of mind. So to your question, I guess, when I come across some more of them, I'll kind of keep you all in mind and go, if I'd have thought of this at the meeting, I should have shared this out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And or if you all come across something because you all, if you have some free time to peruse some of this and you go, why aren't we more involved with this? Please communicate that to
Yeah.
either chairperson or myself so we can maybe have additional
Sounds
conversation
like
about it.
you probably want to take a look at some of those strong welcoming neighborhoods and maybe figure out how we can bridge some gaps there. Or who was that brought it up? No, you did, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
So-
looking at that now.
Yeah.
But is this a subset of the, you said there were 20 odd?
Just
things
under equity and inclusion.
'Cause yeah, so when you look at this, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Oh, correct.
6. So this
Yes.
is a much smaller.
Yes.
What's
So
on the
this
website is just a
But
subset
you're on
of
the
what we were
web,
talking about.
are you on the website or are you looking at this thing again?
I think I'm looking at that thing, yeah.
Okay.
So under strong welcoming neighborhood, for example, with the equity, I think there's 3 to 4 key performance indicators.
Yeah.
And that deal with housing stress for those who are
Right.
homeowners
That's what I'm
and those who are
looking at, yeah.
renters.
Okay.
Deals with point in time count of houseless population. I think there may be another one. So yeah, that's under strong welcoming
I'm just
neighborhood. Then you got
scroll
other
through
stable
real quick if you
identity.
look over here.
But there's nothing there that talks about like discrimination in housing. There's nothing that I see here, there's no box. that talks
No,
about
not directly.
it. Right.
But
Well,
But I'm sure it falls, right, obviously, it's,
So
that's
under
gonna
there-
show up in stress. that's gonna-
exactly.
Right, right.
In the
right.
strategy section, there's a
Right.
overlap with the strategy section that
Yeah.
deals with what is it? A place for everyone. Which deals with our houseless solution division and their strategy. So there's some overlap. in
There
the
might be
strategy.
some stuff here that's
Yes.
telling us how we're doing, we have to be a little
Yeah.
intuitive to figure out where.
Yeah, because we're still talking about a very vulnerable population, so embedded in that is sometimes different types of treatments that can present challenges related to discrimination.
like this strategy here reads, this is under the strong welcoming neighborhood that falls under equity and inclusion, right? So we share this. And the strategy says, create more ownership options for low and moderate income renters who want to become owners by increasing the supply of affordable housing, so.
Right,
you know,
that's like
so-
planning commission.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's what they
probably.
do somewhat, right?
Yes.
But to the extent
So-
that there are people who are renting that are unable to find rental housing because they're being discriminated against because of race or sexual
Or income, yes.
right, or income.
Or another strategy, create lasting solutions to connect people to housing and make homelessness a rare, brief, and
There we go,
one-time
maybe that's a little bit,
experience.
right. a little
So
bit.
if you guys want to, so if you go through and you see that connection, then you can bring that, to us, yeah. And we meet with them. We meet with the outcomes. We try to meet once a month at least, so. It is complicated when you, when you get,
I'll-
because now I'm clicking
yeah.
from this link to this link and that link.
For the record, I sort of share Irving's, what are
Yeah.
we supposed to do?
Yeah, it's a-
Sort of discomfort, because I will admit that when I volunteered for the commission, I was a little bit more, I thought it was a little bit more about looking at the cases that were coming from investigation, sort of like what the Kansas Human Rights Commission does on just on the city level.
Yeah.
And it's not, and that's fine. But I am sort of looking for like, what can we do?
Yeah.
What value
Yeah.
are we adding here? And so, yeah.
Yeah, thank. But also, I remember when there was the transition, when they were looking at all of these commissions, you guys had mentioned that. Should there be a Human Relations Commission? Should it be subsumed under equity and inclusion? Should that be subsumed under all of the particular other commissions? Because it really does touch on all of them. And it almost feels as if, I don't know, no, I'm not saying it right, but it's like we should keep an eye on what everybody else does in terms of equity inclusion to figure out how we can help them or how we can fit in with their efforts.
How we can work together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because do the other boards know of our existence?
Yes, and previously, with the previous Human Relations Commission, there were several conversations about a joint meeting with the AHAB, Affordable Housing Advisory Board. Thanks, Kurt. There was conversation about that with them as well as with the Community Police Review Board. And that's why when they was going through the restructuring process, there was a lot of conversation about the two sort of being combined and what's lost, what's added, and then it got flushed out to where it's like, no, the Human Relations Commission should be a standalone advisory board because of the uniqueness of the work as opposed to AHAB and others. So there were a few times where there was some discussion about would it make sense to either have a joint meeting at some point, or at least I think there was a time where I believe the chairperson from AHAB was invited to a meeting, and then like vice versa. So there was some of that, trying to figure out some crosswalks, if you will.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
I mean, I mean, our slice of the pie has to be connected to the ordinance against discrimination, right? Like,
Yes.
so how can we help the city fulfill the promise in the ordinance of is that people will not experience discrimination in housing, in employment, in public accommodation, on the basis covered by the
It's pretty, yeah, it goes pretty far and wide.
Which,
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to show, like, how can we help that?
Right,
Where
right.
can we provide advice?
which also brings back the question, and forgive me, because the agenda is not fresh on my mind.
So
We weren't
like next month-
consulted when the ordinance was when there was discussion of the ordinance being suspended. And this board had requested follow-up from the city attorney's office.
Did you, Koo, do you want to,
Yeah,
I saw that.
there's a letter that's right
Yeah.
at the very, at the very.
Okay, well, I'll withdraw that question until we get to that on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, I did receive an email from the city attorney's office about an update, and I'm trying to figure out where it might be best to share and how do I best,
so that's on the agenda too, that's number 5. So everything, like the Houseless Bill of Rights fits in with
Okay, we
what you
can do
guys
that,
are
yes.
talking about, the memo to the HRC fits in what you're about to talk about, and the Human Relations Division's update. So you guys are, Kevin, you're leading right into it.
Yeah.
So,
Forgive me for jumping ahead. I apologize.
No,
And did we get like an update of the cases for the past?
we did not get an
Right.
update
That was going to be one of my
this-
questions.
this
So-
meeting.
I think that's the one I just.
yeah, that's
received.
number 5.
Okay.
For this one, I think that the previous one, there was an email that was sent out, I think, prior to the last meeting you all had. I think of like, I think he shared something about how many cases there were, like a handful
Yeah.
or something.
Right.
With that,
Right.
Yeah.
And as I was sitting here earlier thinking about that, maybe I may make it my job just to ask Zach if he has any updates prior to our upcoming meeting. It might have slipped him, I'm sure that.
Okay.
So I'll just send a reminder and see if he could send us a summary.
Okay. And if so, then we can,
Right.
try to include that.
Like get
in
it to the agenda is what
Yeah.
you, is that what you would like? Yeah, we could, yeah.
So,
Like a standing agenda item.
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
He doesn't need to be here.
We talked about that. We did talk about that. Yes. Okay, thank you for that reminder.
Okay.
So we can keep that listed. We'll keep this Human Relations Division's updates on each agenda.
Is there a way to establish that as like common practice? For,
Yes,
for the board?
Yes, in the past it has been. There was always a document sort of floated. In fact, there usually was representation that would show up at the meeting, which again goes to, we talked about having several staff liaison at various advisory board meetings. I think at one point when I first came and joined the city, there was a time or two, I think there was more city staff than advisory board members at some of the meetings. That's a true story. So yeah, there would be, in the past, there was a list provided. I think we had talked about this before, but the advisory board then kind of wanted to know sort of everything that was sort of happening. And so there would be this like lengthy report about even folks who may have called in and called the wrong department or sent an email that was to the wrong information, just to kind of show what kind of complaints are coming in, a level of confusion, et cetera. And maybe that was of value in some cases based on what you were saying, how many people are even familiar with the Human Relations Commission, or
Right.
are they have the wrong information based on the name? And that's why previously there was conversations in some of the meetings about should the Human Relations Commission change its name, right? There was conversation about that to kind of be more of a human rights department, which is more in alignment with many other cities across the nation. So there was lots of things that were happening, lots of changes and resets and et cetera.
Right.
Okay.
It makes it sound like the HR department.
Yeah, it does.
A lot of people interpret it that way, yes.
So if we did want to change our name to the Human Rights, and I'm not saying that this commission does, how does that happen? Do we actually have to petition the city to make that change?
Yes, and there was some conversation about that. There's be a process that would have to go through. It's not as easy of a process as I previously thought it was.
Nothing
a
was
lot of
easy as
name
we think it
changes
is.
and things on the website being changed, cards being changed, etc. But yeah, it would have to
Okay,
go through what we know to be sort of the standard
Gotcha.
process, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, we could chew on that,
Yeah.
and whether it would be worth the bang for the buck.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else about the documents that Ferris had presented? Again, thank you so much for putting the effort together and putting it together. Thanks. Or maybe you didn't do it, maybe you did it, I don't know. Giving credit to the wrong person.
Yeah, team effort. Lena does the heavy lifting for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Well, Kevin, it looks like you're about to be up.
Okay. Well, I'd like to start off with an apology. I'll call it user error. I put together a short synopsis of the research I did, and apparently I never pressed send. So that's my mistake. So I'll get that back together and send that out shortly. But let me give you a brief summary of what I've learned. Basically, I did some research on communities and organizations that had Bill of Rights for people who are unhoused. And I came up with two basic approaches. One is a legislative approach, where a city has adopted an official city commission or city council Bill of Rights that is legislative. And then the other approach is a policies, procedures, and operations organizational. And so those are the two different approaches. Under those, there's a whole slew of ways that it can be looked at. There's equity, diversity, and inclusion, where you talk about discrimination based on various categories. There are rights to specific types of services, whether you're talking about shelter, food, rental assistance, social, my mind's blanking at the second. Case management, a whole different range of services. Which ones the city are going to make sure you have access to, or don't, or they won't guarantee you have access to. There was a lot of discussion I ran into about services for people who come from outside the area, whether you have access to services if you're not from that area. And that's where we get into the discussions of, it's been a big topic of discussion here in Lawrence about outside communities bringing people into the community. I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and there was a debate about whether, if you deny services from people who come from outside the community, whether we're actually violating a constitutional right, because there's a constitutional right to travel. So if we deny services for people who aren't from Lawrence, are we violating their constitutional right to travel? I don't have an answer to that question. That is the question that was discussed a lot. A lot of people, then there's also talk about reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. There's talk about if you're denied services, rights to appeal. There's a whole big, huge range of where this can go. And everybody I spoke to had opinions about what I or we should be doing. I didn't get into those conversations. I said, I'm just trying to find out what has been done. You know, I took some names of people who wanted to provide advice, and I said, maybe, you know, we can reach out later and get some opinions when we're at that stage. We're not at that stage right now. The only stage we're at is finding out what has been done so we can have some models to look at to move forward. And so I got 3 or 4 models. I got 4 models, 2 legislative, 2 policies, procedures, and operations. And I thought that would be a good starting point. I don't know, are there any questions?
I might ask if you peruse the city's website related to homeless solutions by any chance. If not, we might can pull it up. It might be worth just taking a peek at as far as on the city's website, as far as homeless solution division. Because again, this is a division that was recently stood up like two years ago. Yeah, I think you can even, nope.
There was a,
Go so far.
We'd have to look at what
Yeah,
is already covered by the city.
Yeah, I think which is what you were asking sort of last time, sort of what's currently happening. And so just how it reads here, because it covers some of what you were just speaking to. We believe every person deserves access to safe and affordable housing and the essential services that help them thrive. Our teams works with community members and partners to establish policies and services that will end chronic homelessness in Lawrence and Douglas County. You got like sort of like 3 different kind of areas, the place for everyone, which is kind of the city as well as the county, and then the community resources, emergency shelter, and it kind of delves into some of those kinds of different things about emergency shelter, supportive housing, and what was the third one over there, that other box? Affordable housing. So I think it discussed a little bit of what you were saying, but I'm sure there was probably some things that are not included in what you've come across in your research, but it might be worthwhile. I can also maybe mention some names and some folks who probably can help with some additional guidance to kind of help with furthering that research and stuff as well.
I actually did delve through that.
Oh.
I'm also aware that this was started off by some community input that suggested what is in place right now works sometimes and sometimes doesn't.
Could we get a rep from homeless, the division, or is that also like not possible?
Can we get
Is there like a group of the homeless division?
Well, there's a division that's in the city as far as like a city division, yes. And then there's also a couple of different other groups that I've been involved with and helpful with and been informed by that's doing similar work that's been in partnership with the city, the county, the housing department, and some other community organizations and things of that nature, as well as I think with planning with some of the other members, representations from like Habitat for Humanity, Tenants to Homeowners, and some other local organizations that sort of helping address many of these different things. Yeah. So, of course, people who are raised smarter than me in this kind of a space, I just have the surface level with it. So, but if you're asking about having somebody come speak to those points, are you inquiring about, or?
Yeah, I thought this the homeless solutions division had a team, like a working team.
Well, a small
Yeah.
team. It's a team of.
More specifically, at this point, this will affect Misty quite a bit. So does she want to come speak with us? When we get into the weeds, we'll probably want to pull together a wider coalition. But
so when you're talking about this, I'm thinking, what is it that we don't have that we're trying to get? What are the gaps that currently exist for someone who is without housing? And what are the struggles that we're trying to address at this particular time that we could address? Yeah, it's like, if we have a Bill of Rights, is it doing anything for the people who are without housing? Does it give them another tool? Does it give them a club? Does it give them something where it would be helpful for them? So I'm trying to figure out.
Well, my answer to that is
Yeah.
based on the community feedback we've received.
Yeah, okay. Uh-huh.
There's been an inconsistency in access to services. This isn't my answer. This is based on what both public input and other feedback I've received on people accessing services, both people who've come to Lawrence from outside the community. It's been inconsistent. People accessing the services who are trans or indigenous, victims of domestic violence have all had inconsistent services, people with disabilities. And there are policies and procedures in place to address those, but it varies by agency. It varies by who enforces those, and if we get the whole city on one page, and we provide some leadership from this commission, I think we can help really build a place for everyone.
Okay.
So maybe you want to kind of highlight what those gaps are, what those inconsistencies are for as a team, your group?
I think if we work together with affordable housing and a coalition from the community, we can identify strengths and weaknesses within the community and ways to build partnerships and create a step forward that really empowers people who are unhoused to have some opportunity to use their voice and help build a program that better serves them.
Does that help with guiding you guys a little bit?
I think,
Yeah, I guess,
I mean, my view, we've got to, again, I think our charge is over the ordinance that outlaws discrimination. So if we want to propose an amendment to that, that would include houselessness as a protected category, maybe that's something that seems to be squarely within our purview, to sort of study that, to then present an idea to the commission, to write into law. Right, I mean, I think that's what we are primarily here to do, is to deal with the ordinance. And I think some of the things that you're talking about deal with the ordinance, or can deal with the ordinance, but that should be the framework, I think, that we would work through. There may be things that other commissions could do in this area that are in their areas, but I think we have a fairly modest and discrete little slice of the pie, which is the ordinance against discrimination.
Are we limited to ordinance, or can we do policies, procedures, and operations?
That's
I guess I'm
interesting.
curious, what when you say policies, because I think maybe going to what Chairperson Koo was saying earlier about sort of what's the gap in to the conversation, I think is if there's discrimination happening surrounding housing, I think that's sort of what this advisory board is more so tasked with addressing. But if it's simply, not simply, but if it's the conversation is more so about how do we improve certain areas, I think we might kind of, to the earlier conversation with you, are not like sort of duplicating efforts related to taking on the charge of another advisory board who might be addressing certain housing related matters. I think with this advisory board is sort of tasked with more so, or charged with, is ridding the city of any type of discrimination that might be happening specifically regarding housing, employment, and public accommodation, and those sorts of things. So I think there's some overlap that could be there as far as services that are being provided, but especially if discrimination is happening. So for example, I remember doing a tour of the, I forget what the area is called, with the city invested in all the like small homes and things over there. And I know the legal city attorney's office did kind of help them develop sort of some laws, ordinances, policies, and things of that nature, because there was conversations from the community about, well, if somebody is houseless and they have a pet, a dog, etc., can they have shelter? Can they shelter with their dog? And there were some laws and sort of conversation that happened around there that can start to get to like ADA and that types of discrimination, which I think might trigger this advisory board to kind of be more so involved in that process. But if it's not dealing directly with some level of discrimination, I think it starts to get a little bit outside of the sort of boundaries of this advisory board.
So maybe determining if those gaps and inconsistencies are related to discrimination. Does
Yes.
that better help frame it?
So I think like you were saying, if we see some type of data points, whether it's qualitative data, stories people are sharing throughout the community where people who identify as trans are having complications securing housing, then that might start to like delve into what type of, if any, discrimination might be happening that this advisory board might need to say, let's put more of a critical lens to that and see if there's not just a gap, but some subtle discrimination that might be happening to where we can encourage people, hey, why don't you file a complaint and let the attorney start to investigate and see what's there. So if it's something related to trans or characteristics that we're seeing some patterns that might lean itself to, I think there's discrimination happening, I think that might be more germane to this advisory board.
Well, I was hoping my hope was to not put the cart before the horse, not to decide what the subcommittee would have to do.
Yes.
But if we're tied into legislative, that's fine, because what we're talking about is discrimination. We're talking about the civil right to travel. We're talking about legal access to services. So I'm fine with that.
Joe?
Yeah, I'll just note that the city does not seem to be covered by the anti-discrimination ordinance. It does not, this ordinance that does not deal with discrimination in city services. It just doesn't. It deals with employment, it deals with public accommodation, it deals with housing. There's nothing in this ordinance that says the city of Lawrence wouldn't violate our ordinance, right? For the city of Lawrence to deny services to someone on the basis of some suspect classification. I'm sure it would violate another one. Like it would be bad policy, it would violate something else. But I don't know if that would, again, I'm not sure if that falls under, and I could be wrong in thinking what our
Maybe one of
little
those
area is.
protected-
Like
maybe one
where
of those
are the bounds,
protected
where are the
classes?
guidelines for?
If it falls under one of those protected classes.
Yeah, like writ large, or are we just dealing with the housing, employment? Doesn't have to be. I don't know. I just think that's gonna be a question at some point. If we're gonna be stepping over into someone else's area. Maybe to your point, we need to coordinate with other people and sort of see where all the pieces are together.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I said this should be a cross-commission.
Yeah.
A cross-commission initiative. But, you know, for example, I do think the question has been raised that the city has decided services shouldn't be available to people from outside the city boundaries. Is that legal? The question has been raised. What the answer to that question is, I'm not a lawyer, I can't answer. And I won't attempt to. But the question's been brought up to this group. Is homelessness, is being unhoused a protected class? Is that the question we can ask?
Do we have the list of classes that you can pull up?
Can we add that to the list of classes?
I think that's more of our scope,
I'm trying to pull
Adding
up the
more
ordinance here so we
to
can
that
see.
list.
I imagine that when source of income was added, this commission sort of worked with that and talked with the city commission? Am I right on that?
Pretty much. Eventually got to conversation with the city commission, but yeah, I think there were some,
Legal was involved, it hit legal first. Well, it worked through their, they had subcommittees. The subcommittee then worked with the city attorney's office, and then that was presented to the city commission eventually. But it's, yeah.
yeah, I want to say, again, I can't date it. I feel as if maybe at the grassroots level, the conversation probably was going before I even got with the city in 2020. But I do remember the previous Human Relations Commission having some of that conversation. I think when Commissioner Sellers was probably chairperson of the Human Relations Commission, I think some of that work kind of picked up some additional.
Like the hair
momentum.
discrimination, right? Same thing,
Yes.
right? That
Yeah.
when you're adding things to the structure
Yes.
of the ordinance.
So those things did added source of income, like the Crown Act essentially, as well as strengthening protections for trans community members. So those were things that did start to expand Chapter 10 city ordinance. So to your point, I think if there is some other things that says, hey, why isn't Chapter 10 covering this? Is this germane to the Human Relations Commission? Should this be something the city should be addressing as another form of discrimination by proxy? Then that's this advisory board. I think that would be germane to the conversation, to this advisory board to have those conversations and sort of see where that goes, I guess.
So like there's the classes, race, sex, religion, color, national origin, age, ancestry, familiar status, sexual orientation, disability, gender identity, source of income, immigration status. And then there's like definitions that are covered, right? So then you get down into, because I think this is where like the domestic violence piece is added, or, oh gosh, it's a lot. Gender identity,
Just in case you like me.
race. So you see here now we got inclusive of characteristics, not limited to skin color, facial features, hair texture, protective hairstyles, then that gets added in. Source of income. We speak to, how the protection of how the money is derived, right? So then those definitions are laid out even more, so through occupation, through gifts or grants. So there, I think you could probably, there's ways to tweak this Chapter 10 to include protections in certain ways, through definitions or also through those protective classes.
Like for example, it is not unlawful under federal, state, or local law for an employer to deny someone employment because they are homeless. That's not covered. That is not unlawful. It's discrimination, but it's not unlawful discrimination. If we wanted to suggest that, then I think that's squarely sort of within our purview to say, hey, look, we've studied the issue. This is a problem. This is a way to get people out of homelessness, to get them into permanent housing, is to get them employment and jobs and income. Then that's the kind of conversation that I think we're well armed.
And so that
to
studying
have.
piece is where you were key, because the previous board did a lot of that. That's what the subcommittees were, essentially. I mean, they were doing their homework, and presenting it to us. So we weren't really that hands-on, to be honest. I mean, hands-on in the sense of once it was time to educate the public about the different changes that they wanted to bring about, then we kind of, Ferris and I became, crucial. The city attorney's office became crucial for that piece, but for the most part, that board took on that challenge themselves and really studied it. I mean, they had reports and would bring in things from different attorneys from different states, just all kinds of case studies. Like case studies.
Right.
Yes. They really relied on that. So especially for this, and then the safe haven piece, there was another, this group.
Community group,
This group teamed up with a community group that was called, at the time, No SB 180. And now it's called Trans Lawrence. And so they spent a lot of time together, deciding, coming up with, researching definitions, what really fits here, What does it really look like? Are we doing a resolution? You know, even deciding that. Are we just doing a resolution? No, we're not gonna do a resolution. We're gonna do a whole ordinance, you know, we're gonna
Right,
add
it
it
is
to,
an ordinance.
yes. So it's, yeah, that's where you have that freedom to.
Yeah, I think we squarely do. I think
Yeah.
if there are things that we want to suggest amendments to the ordinance to cover issues like that, then I think we're the people to do that. There's no one else doing that.
Yes.
That's what this, that's
You're
what this
correct on
commission-
But maybe that's kind of what we're sharing as well, delineating, I guess, between what might be perceived as good policy versus law.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ah, yeah, okay, I see where you're going with that, yes. 'Cause I was like, okay, that's interesting, yes.
Because it might not be discrimination, but maybe some things can be good policy, but this board focused strictly on discouraging discrimination and taking action if there is discrimination versus helping to set policies that could also.
And I was under the impression that we could recommend policy to the city.
I think we probably, if it's, yeah. I think we're on stronger ground if the policy is connected to things that we are invested with some authority over, in some sense, right? But
Well,
yeah,
I do
don't-
agree, and I
yeah,
agree with that.
right, yeah, but you're right, to your point, I don't think it needs to necessarily be limited just to an amendment to the ordinance, but maybe an amendment to an ordinance, and maybe ask the commission to pass a non-binding resolution or a statement of purpose, and maybe there's value in that. That
Yes.
guides the strategic plan in some way, or guides how a certain department is going to operate and think about when it makes decisions. I think that works too, right?
Yeah.
Not everything maybe can be fixed by an amendment to the ordinance.
Yes.
I agree with that.
So where do we go from here?
Well, Kevin is still doing the research.
Yeah.
So you can't skip that step. Look, that's why I tried to say it 10 ways, but now I'm just gonna really forcefully say, I would do the research if I were you, or in your shoes.
Or I think Kevin said he's concluded the research, it's just it's not the.
Yeah, I just press send.
Okay. Well, then you'll send that out to us, and we can peruse it, and we can cogitate on it, and then we can bring this up again for our next meeting to look at what do we want to do with this? What can we do with this that kind of is within our purview, within our scope?
Thanks, Kevin, for taking time to get
Yeah.
that.
But I think the question is still, do we want to reach out to the housing board, and should we go ahead and, I mean, I think that, do we want to go ahead and take that step?
Do you have questions for them, maybe? Like, do you want to, how would you frame it?
Yeah, when you say reach out to them, what's the relationship you're talking about?
Well, I guess you're right. We need to have more information. We should ask them some specific questions, so
Right.
we should have the information together.
I think the baseline is having your research in
Yeah.
hand, and then we could kind of dissect that, see what falls on our lap, or what we can work with.
Yeah.
Sort of the launching pad once you will receive the research.
You're on your way. It may feel daunting. I think you guys, you look like discouraged faces sometimes. You're like, oh, we're back to square one. But it really does take work, right? You know?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I wouldn't get discouraged.
Okay.
I fully expect this to be a 1 to 2 year process.
Yeah, yeah.
It's baby steps
Yeah.
that we got to take.
All right. Again, thank you so much for the amount of time and effort you put in for this, and then I'm
Absolutely.
looking forward to the product that you had put together that you unfortunately weren't able to send, so,
Sorry.
okay.
I do apologize.
All right. So, all right, any other discussion on this before we move to the next agenda item? What is the next agenda item?
It is.
Letter from city attorney's office.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I should probably share that,
Oh.
actually. Let me get this. I don't want to make sure I do my part here.
Yeah, I seen that.
There we go.
Yeah, the other, I think that was in regards to the email Zach had sent us and there was a line in there that referenced, for those, so we have this kind of public, we have outreach part of a Human Rights Commission. And if anybody, and we have materials and stuff, so if anybody wants materials, they want to be trained to be able to assist us with outreach, that he was available.
I will follow up on that.
Yeah, so, yeah,
Who's this again?
this is Zach, the
Oh, okay.
attorney, right, he had sent us that email. Actually, you had texted me and said, and then said, hey, can we discuss this? I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yeah, if we could throw it
Yeah,
on
you
the
said,
agenda.
did we discuss this piece of the email? Commissioners could be excellent partners for our outreach efforts, and we are happy to provide literature, brochures, et cetera, and training for any commissioner who wishes to take on that.
I'm gonna tell on myself. So Zach let me know, I got here later than I wanted to, but Zach did let me know that he had some material. So some of that was supposed to be delivered to you tonight, but I didn't get to the door by 5,
Okay,
before 5, I should
Right.
say. So I couldn't get in. Basically, I was locked out.
okay.
But, so that piece of it, but as far as maybe coordinating that training, but that will have to, we'll have to like really coordinate that. So I can put that on a to-do list as well.
Okay. That sounds
And
good.
try to get that going.
Now, is that something that the group would be interested as a whole, or individual commissioners, depending on their interests, would really want to take that on as part of
You're
their?
thinking that way, so maybe like, like sign up for it, or how do you see it?
Yeah.
You said regarding the training?
Well, regard the training for outreach effort, to make outreach efforts. Because they do outreach, right?
Yes, yes,
I think they're asking us whether we want to partner with them to do outreach.
yeah. And what type of training that, I think Zach mentioned during his presentation, depending on what type of outreach, the level of training that can be provided, I guess. So I think once he did send out an email about some upcoming events, and to see if any human relations commissioners wanted to participate. I think I recall seeing the email, I can't date it. But yeah, we can double check with him and see, hey, what kind of training, just have some additional discussion about what kind of training, because I think his office will be providing some of that training,
Sure.
as far as community outreach and those kinds of things. But in the meantime, I think because, we all kind of live in different spaces, if you will. So if you all are hearing like, hey, I heard this upcoming event, like I know you shared before about some of the community neighborhood associations, I believe, or something to that effect. So if there are certain things that's coming up where you say, hey, this is like going to be a perfect opportunity for the Human Relations Commission to have a presence here, at least provide some materials. If you can provide as early as a heads up, just understand the government moves slow, that could be helpful. And I could then try to say, hey, Zach, can we see if we can get a training in prior to this, so that there could be a presence from some of the, Human Relations Commissioners at this event right here. So just because, again,
The coordination piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't just put it on their lap, Unfortunately, I can't just grab them.
Yeah, hey, can you join us tonight
Yeah.
at,
It gets tough, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't like being that person, don't make me.
Even though we're all sort of faced with realities,
Yeah.
we don't want lack of capacity on staff side to be a hindrance for doing great community work and things like that. So
Yes.
I think the topic of the memo back to us was we were asking for some clarification about why the city was contemplating pausing or removing.
I will go ahead and just
striking
read that out
ordinance,
loud.
Given what was happening in Washington. And I take the point that to the extent that the advice that they were providing to the commissioners was confidential and not in a public meeting, that would be covered by the privilege and could not be discussed with us.
yes,
I would
Yep, that was
invade the attorney-client privilege in any way. I guess I would just ask, like, how can we get a message to the commissioners that if it's contemplated to come back up on the agenda, that we are given a heads up? rather than just reading it in the newspaper and then maybe it's too late, right? Is there an opportunity for us to say, hey, we saw that, we're concerned about that. If it comes up again, we would like to have the opportunity to be able to put together something to present to the commission, the real commission, about why that, I presume we think our view would be a bad.
So you're
idea.
asking like, even before,
Right.
you're asking like even before it's notified on the agenda?
Well, at least if it's on the agenda, or if it's,
In draft, at least.
Yeah, I mean, if we can be involved a little bit earlier,
Okay.
rather than just reading it in the Journal World.
And I think that has been understood, and I think given this being a public meeting, I think you.
No, maybe that did it.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
I forget that
did
people
that,
actually.
and, the city attorney's office, they usually do review these meetings anyhow, so they hear the conversations, things of that nature. Sometimes before I get the review, they send me an email, hey, I noticed this was said at the Human Relations Commission the other day. So, yes, I think they'll get, I don't speak for the commission or the city attorney's office, but I think there's a sensitivity they do have to try to make sure that people are informed. However,
Because, just for example, like,
Yes.
so I take it what the commission was doing was fairly broad before, or was contemplating was fairly broad. But just today, an individual sued the federal U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission because the EEOC has taken the position that they are no longer investigating any allegation of disparate impact discrimination because of an executive order from the president to say, we don't believe in disparate impact discrimination anymore. And so even like more modest sort of just changes in policy, if there's a thought that we would follow suit and not investigate allegations of disparate impact discrimination under the city ordinance, I think that I would like to know that and be able to, I would hope that this commission would have a voice, at least in that discussion, to say that's not what the ordinance says. And there's something unlawful about it, because this goes back to the 70s. And Supreme Court decisions. I can cite them. Right? So anyway, it's just that I'm a little, there's a lot of changes going on in the employment discrimination space because of what's happening in Washington.
yes.
And I am acutely concerned about that trickling down to the state, and particularly here, the local level.
Yes.
I'm a little confused, maybe because I'm not a lawyer, but how would the body that advises and helps write city law on discrimination policy be not included in law on city discrimination policy? How are we not included in that? The city attorney says that it would be attorney-client privilege. How are we not part of that?
We're not the client. I mean, I can explain. We're not the client.
But we are this. But we are the city in this case. We are representatives of the city who writes this.
Yeah,
I'm asking the question
Yeah, no, I understand. I'll
publicly.
try to give you my best guess.
No, I know what the lawyers would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
I'm asking this as
Yeah, as a non-lawyer, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a public meeting. You can't. I mean, I understand that you can't have that. I mean, I don't know if we can go into executive session. I don't know if we have that authority.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole bunch. There's a lot of questions. I take the city law, the attorneys at her. Is Tony?
Tony.
Tony.
Yes.
At Tony's word. But I take. I mean, it sounds like we agree. We need to be involved. If there's contemplation of alterations going forward, that we need to.
And
We should be part of that conversation.
I question that there wasn't an opportunity to consult us.
Okay. I mean, you may be right. I don't think we're privy to knowing whether that's actually true or not. I would lean towards your opinion on that. My thought was that, given that there was a very short time frame when this was even discussed and made public knowledge, can we kind of be a little preemptive and try to put together something beforehand, just in case, so that we could present it at a moment's notice.
So you
I
guys
could
are being
think.
more proactive about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess not to, I just want to proceed with caution here based on what the city attorney's office have shared related to attorney-client privilege and making sure that the city attorney's office is not violating that privilege as far as representing the elected officials in the city as an organization, if you will. Just because I have some insight into kind of how some things may have transpired, I do know, like you mentioned, just as early as this morning or yesterday, we see some things just happen very, very swiftly, whether it's the elimination of the, Department of Education, Special Education Department, and those kinds of things. So if something happens on a Thursday, just before a Tuesday meeting, sometimes there just might not be that opportunity to kind of, if the city attorney's office have to scramble and do legal research to figure out how to best provide legal advice to their clients to try to figure out how to best protect the city and not expose the city to certain things. I would just say, as part of staff, no bias here, I know that the city commission or city staff is not in the business of necessarily trying to keep things from advisory boards or the general public. So I would think and I believe that given the opportunity that they would include the proper advisory boards involved in some of the decisions, and we'll look forward to the expertise that come from this advisory board and others. But I think some of it is just contingent upon certain turnaround time and the availability, I think. So I'm saying that to say none of us know what might happen out of DC or under this administration, or how quickly some things might happen that might require a quick response. So to the degree possible, I would believe in good faith that the city would try to include and elicit the advice of this advisory board. If that opportunity don't present itself, I'm not sure how they might navigate that.
Yeah, I can go back to, at minimum, if there's gonna be something on the agenda, a email to,
So that was the takeaway.
us, right, so that I don't have to, I'll admit, I'm a bit of a passive citizen of Lawrence, Kansas. I am not going through the city commission agenda every month to see what's on it, like, I'm just not,
Yeah.
So, but, if we could get, hey, by the way,
Okay.
this happened on Thursday, there's something on the agenda
Okay.
on Tuesday, if you wanna have something to say, then you might wanna get your ducks in a row and show up at the commission meeting at minimum, so that we can have
Okay.
a little bit of input. That's what I meant, within reason, obviously.
Understood.
What I can say, just so if it's helpful for you all to sort of better understand the process of how something does get on the city agenda, usually the city clerk's office, so it is for the public watching as well. So city commission meetings are typically the first 3 Tuesdays of the month. So during those first 3 Tuesdays, usually city staff have things they know in advance that they might put on the agenda if it's road construction or whatever that might be. Typically speaking, from one Tuesday to the next, the city clerk's office, you usually like to have everything submitted to them by that Wednesday, so they can put the document together, send it around for a first draft by Wednesday evening, and typically ready to go by Thursday. And usually Thursday evening to Friday, it's published. Might be some minor tweaks Friday to Monday,
Always.
ready for the commission meeting next Tuesday. So if you can see just how that week window works, so from one commission meeting on Tuesday to having the next agenda ready to go a day and a half, 2 days, you can see there's a short window. So to the degree that you all like, hey, we noticed this happened Tuesday, we know the next agenda is gonna be published in 2 days, how quickly can we intervene or get something communicated out there? So just so you all understand how the process sort of works in the time frame.
Well, and I don't believe we had time to run it through a commission meeting. I just think we could have been notified. But, so do we, as the commission, want to create a statement?
We could, I'd like to get a sense if we think this is coming back. I hate making work for myself, let me say that
Yeah.
too, right? Do the work that's necessary. Don't make work.
Understood.
Well, I think the fact that it was even here.
Then maybe it's worth it, right?
Yeah.
That's a good point. If it was once on the agenda, it could reoccur on the agenda. it was never really explained in public about why it was removed.
I think that was
Just
in the comment.
disappeared.
So you just want to be proactive. You don't, just knowing that you may not ever get to
So
show
we
that,
have it,
right?
we've
But if you
got
have it,
something, as
yeah.
Irving said, at the ready, that we can.
If that's the work you want to put some time and effort into it.
I can work on
Okay.
it. I'll work on trying to come up with some
Nice.
draft resolution
Okay.
or statement.
You're worried about that?
I'm sorry?
Are you worried about us doing something like that?
No, I'm worried out of respect for you all sort of time and labor about doing more than what's necessary, I guess, because again, there's been a public meeting.
Okay.
I think the point has been communicated. City Attorney's Office will see this and communicate that accordingly.
Is
So,
a statement even necessary at this
Basically,
at this point? Yeah.
Right.
so again, I think I did have Colleen and I believe had a meeting with the City Attorney's Office from the last meeting to kind of show at this mark, I think it was at the hour mark or 50-minute mark. It was about a 15-minute conversation altogether, and it was like, hey, from this point to this point is where the conversation happened. So they did review that and say, okay, this was
But
the
if
conversation.
you want to make it easier for me,
This was the specific request.
and you have an actual paper, I'm like, hey, go for it, to be honest. But you know, that would be a part of you knowing that it may not, it may not
not
come.
need anything,
Yeah,
might
it just
not
may
be
not ever be
necessary.
needed, yeah.
Well, that's letting the city attorney's office know how we feel, but a statement would let the city commission know how we feel too.
So again, like it's mentioned in the letter there, she essentially, the city attorney's office in large part represents the city commission, that's like she mentioned, as far as being their client, so.
They advise them in a sense.
Yeah, so there may be an obligation there for her to, her office to let the commission know, if you will, so, yeah.
What's our procedures for like an emergency meeting
For, what's the procedure for the city to have an emergency meeting?
for this commission? Do we have?
That's written somewhere. That's in one of those documents I gave. I can try to.
If there's a very specific, it was one of the documents, but the gist of it was, from what I recall, and I don't know how the specific verbiage, but the gist of it is, if there's a specific need to meet outside of the regular traditional business that's being taken by this advisory board, then you can request it. With that, typically you would require the signature and consent of the various advisory board members to make sure that the majority are in consent. That was another conversation I did have with the city clerk's office to say, hey, the advisory board members explain the complications in this process. Is there a way that can expedite this? Because they only meet every other month, so the chances that they're going to meet to sign off on a document is going to be at least 2 months. So, and I hope I'm not mistaken what she said here, but I think she said their consent can happen via electronic.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
so yeah.
So it could be essentially 1-2 day turnaround for an
Yes.
emergency meeting.
So
Because if we learn of something
You
tomorrow,
all to say, hey, individually, without violating open records or open meetings act, of course, to say, hey, this like it requires a special meeting. What you all thoughts, can we get something to Paris or Kalina?
But the special meeting has to be public?
Yes, absolutely.
because if we learn of
Would be
something
getting this
tomorrow,
through.
and we're not.
That might be
Yes.
the challenge,
Remember
yes.
that was the.
That seems to be one of the challenges.
But it's easier when you remember. It's easier to have a one-off. Remember, we were.
Oh,
Yeah. So so we're back to that.
And
So
it
we
is
were-
to have a
exactly
continued
yes.
meeting,
Yes.
Okay.
So that was the nuance with it.
right?
Yeah.
So we can,
That agenda item. or
You guys are
like-
learning today. I feel like you guys are really accomplishing, though. I'm cheering you on.
all right.
So, Joe, is that something you think you?
Yeah,
want to take
I'll
on?
still, it
Okay.
won't take a lot of my time.
Yeah.
Try to get some thoughts.
Okay.
I'll try to have something ready for our next meeting.
Thank you so much.
and we can decide how we'll go forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super. Okay. Okay, anything else about the, human?
Oh, just those updates, yeah. Do you want me to read that email? Yeah, I'll just read that,
Sure,
I'll just read that email. I'm sorry. I don't have, this is not my, long story.
Or I can read it.
Okay, great.
So I can just read the email that we received earlier from Zach. So he says, here is an update to share with the Human Relations Commission with the work being completed by the Human Relations Division. As a reminder, we also have new promotional materials available to them to share at any of their outreach activities. They are here on the 4th floor. The bigger update is that we won the challenge to our source of income ordinance. As you know, the city ordinance that added source of income and immigration status to our anti-discrimination law was challenged by a group of landlords. After ruling favorable to the city by the district court and the Kansas Court of Appeals, the landlords of Lawrence appealed to the Kansas Supreme Court. On September 19th, we received notice that the Supreme Court declined to review the case, meaning that the ruling from the Court of Appeals in the city's favor will stand. There are no other appeals available, and this brings the case to an end. The Human Relations Division has been enforcing and will continue to enforce violations of the protections of source of income and immigration status. Then he goes on to say the Human Relations Division has 4 cases under investigation by our investigator. 1, housing complaint about an accommodation for a person with disability, specifically the use of an elevator that was out of operation. 2, employment complaint about different treatment in a workplace based on sex and or gender. 3, housing complaint about a landlord who refused to rent to someone using housing choice vouchers. And 4, housing complaint by a person who believes their landlord did not renew their lease because of the tenant's number of children, which deals with familial status. We have 1 complaint that is drafted, and we are in the process of getting the complaint signed before we begin an investigation. There's a housing complaint about a landlord not accepting a housing choice voucher. The Human Relations Division received 3 complaints that we could not pursue. 1, an accommodation for a disability that was not requested of the landlord and is now out of time. 2, report of discrimination, but the complaint and the rental property are outside of our jurisdiction, another city, Wichita. And then 3, reports of a dispute between a landlord and a tenant and did not involve the protection under Chapter 10 of the City Code. And that completes the email. That's the update from the City Attorney's Office or Human
Yeah.
Relations Division.
Okay.
So the housing voucher seems to be a pattern.
That was one of the more recent sort of hot topics over the last 2 to 3 years now.
Yeah.
Well, please send my thanks, our thanks to, I can speak to Zach for the update. They are, I think it's one of the key things that we can do every month, just to sort of get a sense for how those cases are going and proceeding. That's one of our key metrics on this, right? Like,
Yes.
are those cases being investigated timely and getting resolved in a way? And so it's helpful to hear that from Zach.
Yes.
And I must say, the way he presents it is a lot better than it was before. Oh my gosh, I used to hate those case summaries. Trying to compile and put it, send it to the Human Relations Commission in time, and then they kind of, wouldn't go through it because just the way it looks, like presented
That
itself.
was very helpful.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I think that's it on your agenda.
Thank you. Next meeting is December something?
You want me to name that exact date?
Oh.
Yes, I will. It is,
And while you're doing it, just by way of announcement, because I don't think Chairperson had enough time to kind of maybe share it out, but we do have you all have another new advisory board member. You probably saw the name on the other document. It's
Aaron Norris.
Aaron Norris, yes. Unfortunately, he was appointed earlier last week or mid last week somewhere, so he already had some commitments and couldn't make it this meeting, but intends to strive to make it to the next meeting, which is the
that date is December 15th
Okay,
at 6 p.m.
super.
Same room.
And does that leave us with one open slot here?
Correct. So we currently have 6 out of 7, so 1 vacancy still pending. I have no idea when that's gonna be filled. So, yes.
All right. Any other announcements?
Not that I can think of. Maybe to the larger conversation, this is further in the future, but it's to some of the conversation I think that has transpired this evening surrounding like HUD and funding and what that might mean as far as what the federal government might do related to HUD and funding, and how, if at all, might that impact investigations of housing complaints and discrimination, things like that. So that might be something germane to this advisory board to kind of keep eyes and ears to. And
Okay.
if some shift happen, what might that mean for capacity, ability, quality, et cetera, et cetera. Yes.
If there's a significant shift, is that something you can just shoot us an email and notify us about?
Yes. Yes. Keep our fingers crossed for the best.
Okay, hopefully you won't have to send them. All right. Any other announcements? All right. We're at adjournment. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Super. All right. Thank you. Kevin?
Thank
could
you, guys.